West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
It feels a little bit like covering the Dominion and Smartmatic lawsuits, that if in our political arena, if in the Senate there weren't enough votes to convict Donald Trump for incitement, that perhaps a lawsuit such as this will hold him accountable. Can you just give us your assessment of that backseat legal analysis?
I think that's right, Nicole. I don't think this lawsuit is surprising in any way. I've been waiting for it. I mean, the fact is Donald Trump fomented violence. Even Liz Cheney said it. And Mitch McConnell, as you were just playing, literally invited this lawsuit on the floor of Congress. So it's hard to say, as the Trump defenders will, whoever is left defending him, that this is a political lawsuit, because major Republicans are saying there's gravity behind this lawsuit, that Donald Trump conspired and gave aid and comfort to what happened on January 6th, and that he perpetrated this big lie, and a big lie that has all sorts of corrosive effects on our democracy. We see it playing out in Georgia as kind of giving aid to this ridiculous voting law and the like. And so it's illegal what Trump did, and it's immoral. And at its best, the law captures those things. It captures vile acts of wrong. And just if I could read one excerpt from the lawsuit, this is what the complaint said today, quote, Officer Hemby was attacked relentlessly. He was bleeding from a cut located less than an inch from his eye. He had cuts and abrasions on his face and hands, and his body was pinned against a large metal door, fending off attacks. So when Donald Trump says that these folks were hugging and kissing the guards, my God.
I want to read some more from it, because you're right. That is the news today, this new lawsuit. Luke, let me read to you what became, during impeachment, in both the House debate and in the Senate trial, central for the Republicans who voted with the Democrats, and that was Donald Trump's conduct while the insurrection was ongoing. So let me read this, also from the lawsuit. For several hours after the mob had stormed the Capitol, Trump had the continuing ability to issue statements through traditional and social media, but refused to communicate anything to his followers that might discourage their relentless assault and battery on James Blassingame and Sidney Hemby and their fellow officers at the Capitol. Trump thereby ratified the conduct of his followers and ensured that the assaults on the plaintiffs and fellow officers would last much longer, worsening the physical and emotional injuries of the plaintiffs and other officers. When he finally did make statements late in the afternoon, Trump further ratified the conduct, and when he again said that the election had been stolen by fraud and that his followers had every reason to be angry, and by announcing support, praise, and love for his followers. All that, Neil, happened in plain view. I covered it in real time, astonished. Does it also leave him open to more legal exposure?
Absolutely. I mean, if you could short Donald Trump right now, and, there'd be a good time to do so. I mean, everything you're saying, Nicole, is absolutely right. And, this in conjunction with kind of new developments going on in New York with respect to Weisselberg and the like. I mean, Donald Trump is in serious trouble. And, the difference between now and the past is that the Republican Party and senior officials in there are inviting this trouble now and saying that there's merit to it.
Luke, you have, I think, the definitive piece of reporting about a half a dozen contacts, associations, appearances with House Republican members and some of the militia groups that we know to be under scrutiny. Many of them have been charged since your piece of reporting came out. But I wonder what the reaction is among Republicans in Congress to a lawsuit like this, from what, with history as a guide, is a natural alliance, Republicans would say, between Republicans and law enforcement.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a moment of some soul searching for members of Congress. Shortly after the attack, there was widespread anger among the Republicans I talked to on the Hill about what happened and Donald Trump's role in it. And particularly, as you pointed out, his lack of doing anything after the attack broke out. Kevin McCarthy famously had this very angry phone call with the president, urging him to do more to call off the attack. In that time, after those initial hours, though, it seemed many Republicans made the calculation that they needed to align themselves more deeply with Donald Trump because they heard from their base, who was still very loyal to him. So again, now we're seeing new details come out. This is now the second officer who's gone on record to say he was called the N-word by the mob, documenting the racism and the personal anguish and mental strife that many of these officers went through. And will Republicans now hear these messages and rethink the relationship with Donald Trump? I'm not encouraged that will happen. I don't think that will happen, but it will be a test for each of them to consider this evidence and decide what to do about it.
Elizabeth Newman, I'm going to apologize to you in advance for what may have to be an interruption to take an important speech from President Biden when it begins. But I'd like to get you on the record, one, on the lawsuit, and two, on what Luke's getting to. This investment, it would seem, on the part of Republicans to rewrite the truth, rewrite the history, which has been chronicled in the New York Times and by NBC News and many other news outlets as a horrific and violent attack on the Capitol and on the country by Trump supporters.
It struck me as remarkable that now we're hearing eyewitness accounts of people that were actually attacked. And while members of Congress were themselves part of those, that they were victims too, but not nearly the way that the 140 plus law enforcement officers were victimized. And to hear their firsthand accounts, it is impossible to keep trying to revise this history. And so Republicans have a problem on their hands. They keep trying to move on, and they have Trump out there trying to rewrite the story as if they were hugging and kissing with police officers, that you hear people say, oh, these were just political protesters, they crossed the line, they trespassed, they shouldn't have done that, but they were peaceful. This description, first-hand account from a law enforcement officer who, by the way, in their training is trained to be able to document things like this, it is anything but peaceful. And it is clearly racist in what one of the officers faced. So I don't know how the Republican Party, given that this is just the first of what is expected to be many such lawsuits coming up, I think their strategy is wrong. You had that memo that came out today from Axios that says that they need to lean into Trump. I think that's a bad strategy for them because this is not going away. The Republican Accountability Project is going to keep reminding voters if their congressman supported the big lie and did not condemn the insurrection, we're going to remind their voters. So the strategy needs to be rejecting Trump, not cozying up to him.
Well, and Luke, everything that they're doing seems to sort of have at its nexus the continued adherence and servitude to the big lie in pushing laws disguised as election security when there really isn't a problem in this country of systemic or widespread voter fraud, blocking the formation of a 9/11 style commission. Is there any prospect where we have any bipartisan commitment to an investigation like the 9/11 Commission into the 1/6 attacks?
I'm not encouraged that we'll have bipartisan buy-in into the January 6th attack. The closest thing we have going on right now is in the Senate. We have a series of hearings that both Amy Klobuchar, Roy Blunt, and others are running, looking into what went wrong on January 6th and some investigation over there. But the House bill, as proposed, is stalled right now to get a 9/11 style commission off the ground. I do think, as you mentioned, this moment for Republicans in choosing which path to take is so different now in the Trump era. It wasn't that long ago that Republicans were trying to be a bigger tent party and were trying to find a different path where they could invite in different groups to their tent. And now it seems completely, there's one strategy: bet on Trump, stick with Trump. And that seems to be the path that the majority of the Republicans in Congress are married to.
It is Thursday, the 1st of April of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, they say it's April Fool's Day. I really hate those pranks, so I'm not going to get involved in it. I will confess, though, that I did fall for the Volkswagen story the other day, reported here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Apparently, it was an early April Fool's joke. Thanks, Volkswagen. I guess I'm not buying your car. Well, I already have one anyway. And it's a hybrid, so I'll just stick with it for a little while, okay? So, yeah, April Fools. There's something about it that just seems inherently cruel, and I don't like laughing at people's misfortune or their mistakes. I know that there are some that we do take great joy in watching them falter, and that's only because they're hypocrites. So we can laugh at them. But generally, I hate, pulling a prank on the unsuspecting. I just never was my deal. And, certainly I've fallen for a few April Fool's jokes in my day. And, of course, I did do a few in my day as well. At some point, it's like hunting. At some point you go, I don't want to hunt anymore. This is weird. Yeah, well, I could still do it. I choose not to, and that's the way it is in America. Hey, it's Thursday, Easter Sunday, Good Friday tomorrow, too. So, yeah, we're on our way. Might have a little bit of a family gathering. I do get my second shot on Saturday, the Pfizer shot. And I don't know, maybe, I keep hearing that you might get a little sick for a bit, so I don't know what I'll be feeling like on Sunday. Word is, though, anecdotally, not all cases now, mind you, but in some cases, people have gotten a little sick, and it was that way for a few hours or more, and then almost like the snap of a finger, they felt good. So that's the course that it runs, or should be expected to run. So I don't know how I'll feel on Sunday. I may just want to stick at home. And Mom's not feeling too well lately. She has a degenerative disc in her lower back, unfortunately. We had an MRI the other day. She's been complaining quite a bit here about how uncomfortable it is, and down in her saddle region, too. So I was afraid. I hope she didn't crack a bone. But degenerative disc, that's, I guess expected when you get old, I guess. But we'll be going to a specialist in a few weeks. Got to get that all set up and then the appointment made, but at least the referral is out there. So Mom's not feeling so great about, moving about. Doesn't stop her from getting out in the garden and, doing some work. I keep telling her, stop lifting that. Well, if I don't lift it, it won't get done. Oh, thanks. Thanks for the respect that you're extending to your caregiver, who is also your son. But, sometimes people get cranky when they're uncomfortable, and that's understandable. So, I guess she doesn't really like pain meds, the kind, narcotics. And it's hard to get her just to take a Tylenol. But I think she's a little more amenable to it now. And we'll just need to take care of that. Got to get the hot tub going. Got one of those inflatable Intex. And it was so cold during the winter, I hardly used it. It was available. But I got to get out there and get the chlorine levels and everything leveled. And get my mom in that tub, and I think that will help her lots and stuff. Just ease all of that irritation from the nerves just getting ground. That's why she's in pain. Ouch. So the Derek Chauvin trial goes on. I am so afraid that this judge is pushing for a mistrial, because I've never seen a judge attack witnesses to a murder in the way that this judge is. It is really quite bothersome. I'm just reminded of the EMT, the firefighter EMT, Genevieve. I am so sorry, I forget her last name. Where she's, getting hammered by defense counsel, essentially saying, oh, well, you're the reason that the cops choked off Floyd because you distracted them with your Good Samaritan antics. And, she's not going to take any shit. But when the judge admonished her, now, after the jury had left the room, thankfully, but he told her, do not argue with counsel, do not argue with the court. And she simply said, I was just finishing my answer. And then he testily blurted out, I will tell you when your statement has ended. Really? I think there needs to be, that judge needs to be sat down and talked to about how he treats witnesses. But I really fear that this judge is moving for a mistrial. Why? Well, look where they are. Look at the history. How many times have cops gotten away with what Chauvin has gotten away with? Heck, Chauvin has 18 cases of overuse of force already. I think he shot a couple of people. He may even killed some. But nothing happened to him. Oh, yeah, a little slap on the wrist. Probably got a medal for a good job. Way to go. But I also suspect that there's a lot of people in that force that didn't like the guy. And it's a bit unfortunate, maybe, for the two rookies who were there. Now, Officer Dow, he's been around for a bit, but there were two recruits pretty much starting out. And they're not going to go against the will of their instructor. If their instructor is doing something, they presume that that's the way it's got to be. And if you question it, you're not a cop. Talk about cancel culture. So the witnesses themselves have been so powerful in their testimony. So powerful that a juror had to leave the room during a break to go decompress and cry. These people hadn't seen the video, the viral video of George Floyd being choked off. That's how they were able to be jurors. They don't know anything. Yeah. So it was so emotionally upsetting that she had to cry. Witnesses cried on the stand. And I'm pretty sure the judge doesn't like that because it's making the cop look bad. I just have a feeling about this judge. Just the way he snaps at traumatized witnesses to a murder. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, at the top, that was a breakdown on a new lawsuit by 2 Capitol police officers that holds Donald Trump directly responsible for the Capitol Hill riot. On the rest of the menu, Oregon Democratic lawmakers decry the years-long Republican-led legislative slowdown tactics. They just keep it up. It's called nullifying anything a Democratic legislator does. A new GOP-led voting restrictions bill passed a key vote in Texas late last night, early this morning. They like to do that, dead of night. And an Ohio electric company accused of a $60 million bribery and corruption scheme will refund $26 million to customers that it collected through a tainted nuclear bailout bill. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Italy ordered 2 Russian embassy officials expelled for spying, and the EU is taking Poland to court over concerns about judicial independence. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, right there by the social media scroll. And the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. And everything else that you do, thank you. If you would then look across the page to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, right there is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring patronage in the amount of, say, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink? If you could send those funds to us once a month, we're able to stretch those dollars with our own, by the way, and then we're able to pay our bills. And then with that activity and behavior, we somehow fly under the radar and continue resisting, as the founders originally intended, oh, so many years ago. Those founders was quite a while ago. But this concern, this resistance radio, this powerhouse, started 10 years ago this year. That's right. Right around this time of year, too. Took us a little bit from our February launch date 10 years ago. When I say a little while, just, a few weeks. And then we went 24/7, 365, and we have not stopped. Nope. Some call it dedication, and some people might call it a duty to our civic involvement. We have to do this. We must. And we want to. I guess that's the most important thing in America, is what you want to do, not what you must. Anyway, we thank you for your generosity, because this is a serious endeavor that we are endeavoring upon, and will continue to do so because of your generosity. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. You just go to @NetrootsRadio. You don't have to jump through hoops. And that's because Tom takes care of it, and Tom knows how to, get rid of the hoops that everybody has to jump through. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of @JusticePutnam, because that's me. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. You know who they are. And please do check out the show notes and links. I'll just remind folks, that's where the real reportage is. Pretty much sans the contrived humor. Pretty much. Follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Okay. Hey, opening day today, and that's no April Fool's joke. And guess what? The National League doesn't have the DH this season. That was just an experiment. My God, I thought the Russians finally won. Destroyed the very heart of America. Do not get rid of the pitcher batting. That's no more DH. When the DH was instituted way back in the 60s in the American League, even then as a 10-year-old, or maybe I was 12, even then I said it was a Russian plot to destroy America. I think I'm right. We came very close. Do not institute the DH in the National League. In fact, if it was me, I'd be kicking it out of the American League too. Okay. Have a happy crack of the baseball on a spring day. Let's dive into this first offering here. Or actually, I like to term tuck in now rather than dive. We'll tuck in to this first offering here because we do have a culinary metaphor going on, don't we? Uh-huh. And this offering comes out of the Associated Press by Sarah Klein. Oregon's House of Representatives returned to the Capitol this week after floor sessions had been canceled due to multiple COVID-19 cases. And guess who had them? The ones who refused to wear a mask. And you know who they are. But Republicans continue to use a stalling tactic that Democrats say is putting lawmakers' health at risk. And that's a feature, not a bug, because they want to get to herd immunity, and how they get to herd immunity is by killing as many people as possible, especially if they're of color or liberal. It's the latest partisan flashpoint in the state, where Democrats hold strong majorities in both the House and Senate, but where the GOP has often used extreme means to thwart legislation it does not like. Like due process and equal protection for all. Because if you do that, that's taking something from them. For the past 2 years, Republican state senators staged walkouts to deny the chamber a quorum. But this year, Democrats say a slowdown strategy playing out in the House is dangerous because it prolongs people's possible exposure to COVID-19. On Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, GOP lawmakers in Salem again refused to suspend the full reading of proposed bills allowed before a final vote. You're going to read the whole bill. A maneuver that could add hours to the passage of even simple bipartisan legislation, like we're going to honor the janitor for making the floors in the hallway so shiny. Well, we're going to have 2 days of reading that. The minority party says a slowdown is one of their only hopes of influencing legislation they feel is controversial. Like Obamacare. Voting by mail, which we've done for the last almost 30 years. Now it's suddenly an issue. What other things may they be concerned about? Oh, yes. Righting the wrongs for Oregon's racist past. Can't have that. In years past, both parties have agreed to skip bill reading, but the action requires a 2/3 approval. During the first floor session of the week, nearly the entire day, of about 5 hours and 45 minutes, was spent reading a portion of just one proposed bill. House Speaker Tina Kotek, a Portland Democrat, estimates that reading the rest of the bill, along with another one on the agenda, will take about 8 hours. Currently, there are more than 40 measures that require a third reading and await a final vote in the House. To ease the strain on the clerk, who typically must read the bills aloud, a computer program is being used to read the bills to lawmakers. How interesting. If Republicans suspend bill reading, we could easily move through all of these bills in a day and conclude our business efficiently, said Representative Karen Power, a Democrat from Milwaukee. That's in Oregon, by the way. The House was already dealing with a backlog of proposed bills after floor sessions last week, and on Monday were canceled due to 2 individuals who tested positive for COVID-19. We've been stuck in limbo, reading bills for hours due to Republican inflexibility on suspending rules, said Representative Representative Maxine Dexter, a Portland Democrat. Republicans on Wednesday again refused to back down on the full reading of all proposed bills, leading to chilly reactions from Democrats who called the GOP's actions reckless and pointless, incredibly disappointing, and threatening to the lawmakers' health. Representative Julie Fahey, a Democrat who represents West Eugene and Junction City, said reading bills in full can have very real consequences when it comes to COVID-19. Fahey is among many of the lawmakers who are not yet eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. This is not a game, Fahey tweeted on Tuesday. In an attempt to decrease the COVID-19 risk, lawmakers are working in their Capitol offices as the bills are read and then return to the floor for discussions and voting. Last week, prior to the confirmed COVID-19 cases, Drazen sent a letter to Kotek with a list of demands in order to end the Republican slowdown tactics. Among them were for the House not to exceed a regular full-time schedule for session days and only advance budgets and legislation which have bipartisan consensus support. Bipartisan consensus support from Republicans? No, that's not possible. Democrats have dismissed the demands as unreasonable and have also noted that nearly 90% of the bills on the third reading list came out of committee unanimously, and many are bipartisan. Coronado and Paul J. Weber of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Texas Republicans advanced a slate of proposed new voting restrictions early today that would reduce options to cast ballots, limit polling hours, and hand more power to partisan poll watchers. And when we say partisan, we mean repugs. All those efforts are rolled into a single bill that cleared the GOP-controlled state Senate, a key marker in a campaign by repugs, including Governor Greg Abbott, to impose new restrictive measures over elections in America's biggest red state. They're only red because they don't let people vote. It comes after an elections overhaul was signed into law last week in Georgia, where opponents have already filed lawsuits and are calling for boycotts of corporations that are silent on restrictive voting measures. Critics of the Texas legislation say the efforts particularly target expanded access put into place during last year's election in Harris County, which is home to more than 2 million voters, controlled by Democrats, and a key Texas battleground that includes Houston. One measure would eliminate drive-through voting, which more than 127,000 people around Houston used during early voting last year. More than half of those voters were Black, Latino, or Asian. Hearing all of that, who are you really targeting when you're trying to get rid of drive-through voting, said Democratic State Senator Carol Alvarado. Republicans rejected accusations that the bill was designed to suppress turnout. But, when you listen to their secret phone conversations, they say it's not about fraud. It's about keeping Democrats, and particularly Black, Latino, Asian, anybody of color, all liberal cannot vote. They're not real Americans. Only fascist repugs are. Voting rights groups say the measures would disproportionately impact racial and ethnic minority voters. In Texas, which already has some of the strictest voting laws in the U.S., the proposed legislation grants more power to partisan poll watchers and eliminates the option to cast a ballot via drive-thru. The bill also includes a provision requiring a doctor's note for people with disabilities who want to vote by mail. You have to get an appointment with your doctor so that you can vote. Sounds like a poll tax to me. Of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An Ohio electric company under scrutiny for its role in what federal authorities say was a $60 million bribery and corruption scheme said it will refund $26 million to customers that it collected through a tainted nuclear bailout bill, which was repealed by the governor yesterday, Wednesday. The millions in question were paid by customers of Akron-based First Energy Corp's 3 Ohio electric utility companies as part of a revenue guarantee that they steadily receive on the same amount of annual revenue they collected in 2018, a year of extreme weather and high electric use. The announcement came the same day Republican Governor Mike DeWine signed a bill repealing the nuclear bailout and other provisions of the earlier bill. The repeal legislation gets rid of electricity bill surcharges that were created in 2019 to pay for the bailout of the Davis-Besse nuclear power plant near Oak Harbor and the Perry plant east of Cleveland. The company said in a release that it is, quote, committed to engaging in a holistic and transparent manner. Oh, really? Now, after you got caught bribing people and extorting them. And that was as part of a months-long review undertaken after the arrests in July of then House Speaker Larry Householder, a Republican, and 4 others alleged to have been involved in the bribery scheme. I bet they're Republicans, too. First Energy stopped collecting the revenue guarantee starting in February to settle a lawsuit with Republican Ohio Attorney General David Yost. Federal prosecutors claim Team Householder used money secretly funneled from First Energy to win passage of House Bill 6, which provided $1 billion to rescue 2 nuke plants operated by a then First Energy subsidiary, and to engage in a dirty tricks campaign to stop a proposed referendum aimed at repealing the bill. Householder has pleaded not guilty and remains a state representative because they're not Democratic people who would just get rid of an Al Franken for faking he was going to grab a starlet's breasts on a USO tour before he was ever a legislator. He was a comedian. The Office of Ohio Consumers Counsel, which represents the interests of residential electricity customers, had asked the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio to order First Energy to, quote, remedy what would be a miscarriage or perversion of justice, end quote, if the company would be allowed to keep the revenue guarantee money. Ohio should not allow First Energy to walk away from House Bill 6 with even a penny of consumers' money. Consumers Counsel Bruce Weston said in a statement, "It is good to see First Energy's announcement today that it will refund these House Bill 6 charges to consumers, even if it took legislation and the potential for PUCO action to help First Energy see the light." Then CEO Chuck Jones told investors after the passage of the energy bill in July of 2019 that the rate guarantee made a portion of the company recession-proof. Jones is among top executives who were fired after last year's summer's arrests. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, We will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Burley McCoy. Mercury pollution from power plants and mining operations can end up in our air and water, but it's tricky to predict just how much of that environmental mercury will make its way into our food and our bodies.
We were working on developing a bioindicator, a biosentinel that could inform us of the levels of mercury contamination across the U.S.
Ecologist Colin Eagles-Smith of the United States Geological Survey. He and his colleagues came up with a practical way to determine the scope of mercury contamination in an ecosystem by measuring mercury levels in a single species. Their bioindicator? Juvenile dragonflies, or larvae. Dragonfly larvae stay underwater, don't move much, are easy to collect, and live long enough to accumulate significant amounts of mercury.
If you have enough locations sampled with dragonflies, you can develop an index of the relative amount of mercury in the biological community.
The team measured mercury concentrations in thousands of dragonfly larvae collected from waterways in 100 national parks during a 10-year period. And to amass the large sample number, they recruited volunteers through the Dragonfly Mercury Project. The volunteers used dip nets to collect dragonfly larvae from their aquatic abodes. National park staff then sent the larvae to laboratories for processing. For comparison, the researchers also measured mercury concentrations in other aquatic organisms.
Using the relationships between dragonfly concentrations and fish concentrations, we were able to develop what we call an impairment index.
That index allowed the researchers to make health risk predictions at each sample site.
About 12% of the locations posed what we consider to be high or severe risk of health impairment to fish, wildlife, and humans if they consumed organisms from those locations. You can begin to build models that are predictive of how much mercury might be in a system based on the landscape characteristics and the water chemistry, and then apply that model to locations where you haven't sampled dragonflies. And that can inform future management actions, either to address the factors that are promoting methylmercury production or simply to inform agencies that may want to evaluate whether or not fish consumption advisories are warranted.
The study is in the Journal of Environmental Science and Technology. If you'd like to get involved in the Dragonfly Mercury Project or to see a map of mercury concentrations across the U.S., search for the Dragonfly Mercury Project at nps.gov. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Burley McCoy.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As the days get longer and the weather warms, people of all ages will start to spring into action. Spring is a great time to breathe fresh air, stretch your arms and legs, and get physically active outdoors. Lack of physical activity contributes to obesity, heart disease, stroke, and other chronic health conditions. Fortunately, many communities are making it easier and safer to be physically active. Neighborhoods across the country are working together to create more public spaces for walking, running, biking, and other physical activities. Adults should get at least 150 minutes of physical activity each week, and children should get 60 minutes a day. If you find it hard to walk to a local recreation center, park, or playground, learn how to make your neighborhood a place that makes healthy living easier. Visit makinghealtheasier.org for information about ways communities can change to get more people outside and moving.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom.
could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Is there someone you think should be executed? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Let's say you're generally opposed to the death penalty, but how about an exception for someone who's committed a particularly heinous murder? The question is front and center today because Virginia in late March abolished capital punishment, so a majority of states now have no death penalty. 23 states have barred capital punishment altogether. 3 more have a gubernatorial moratorium for a total of 26. 9 additional states have the death penalty on their law books but haven't used it in a decade, that's 35, and 5 more haven't carried out an execution in more than 5 years, which means that in 40 out of the 50 states, capital punishment is either prohibited altogether or not used. The death penalty is a system run by fallible human beings, which means it makes mistakes, and it's overtly racist. In Virginia, for example, in the 20th century, almost 80% of those executed were black. So even if you believe that some particular person should be executed, the price for that would be acceptance of a flawed, arbitrary, and racist system of government-sponsored premeditated killing, a system that doesn't make us safer, demeans our humanity, is enormously expensive, and executes innocent people. That trade-off is unacceptable. The fact that Virginia, a former Confederate state with a long bloody history of executions, has abolished that system is a step towards justice. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
Ralph Waldo Emerson told of a dinner guest who went on and on about the virtue of honesty, offering his own life as a model of perfect rectitude. The louder he talked of his honor, said Emerson, the faster we counted our spoons. That's my reaction to the cacophony of phony piety arising from Republican governors and legislators who are trying to enact more than 250 new state laws to stop black, Latino, Asian American, indigenous, and other non-Caucasian voters from casting ballots. Yet they proclaim, we're not racist, we're righteous crusaders protecting the sanctity of the vote. Really? So why are they specifically targeting people of color with their repressive voting restrictions? For example, panicky Republican lawmakers in Georgia tried to outlaw any early voting on Sundays. Odd. Why? It's a flagrantly racist attack on the black church. For years, a joyous civic tradition called Souls to the Polls has played out in Southern black churches on Sundays prior to Election Day. After the sermon and prayers, congregants, ministers, musicians, and others in the church family travel in a caravan to early voting locations to cast ballots. It turns voting into a civic, spiritual, and fun experience. What kind of shriveled soul tries to kill that? Apparently, the same shameful souls in the Georgia GOP who want to stop local groups from providing water and snacks to citizens forced to wait for hours in line to vote. They're actually trying to make it a crime to give water to thirsty voters. Hey, Republicans, what would Jesus do? This is Jim Hightower saying the goal and duty of every public official ought to be to maximize voter turnout. After all, the more Americans who vote, the stronger our democracy. But there's the ugly political truth. Republican officials no longer support democracy. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, now live streaming on Facebook from the Chat and Chew Cafe. So grab a libation, pull up a virtual chair, and join our freewheeling conversations with political mavericks, musical agitators, and kick-ass grassroots groups. The Lowdown Happy Hour will connect you to good trouble activists who are building people power across America. Get the lowdown at hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day 400,000 bituminous coal miners walked off the job in 26 states. They demanded higher wages, better health benefits, and safety regulations. The strike began to cripple industrial operations nationwide. By May 22nd, President Harry S. Truman seized the mines. Miners returned to work a week later. John L. Lewis, president of the United Mine Workers, signed an agreement with Secretary of the Interior Julius Krug. It included wage increases and vacation pay, the 5-day work week, and contributions to a retirement fund. The strike led to the Promise of 1946, otherwise known as the Krug-Lewis Amendment. It created the UMWA Health and Retirement Funds. It is this fund that is often referred to in present-day discussions concerning the loss of retiree health and pension benefits. According to Robert Hartley and David Kenny, authors of Death Underground, the Centralia and West Frankfurt mine disasters, the welfare program was to provide medical care, rehabilitation treatment, and death benefits. It provided the authority for the director of the U.S. Bureau of Mines to establish a federal mine safety code, to enforce mine safety regulations, and provided the first legal authority for federal inspectors to close mines found to be dangerous. Lack of enforcement would prove deadly for miners in Centralia and West Frankfurt. The health and welfare funds, however, provided relief and security for miners for decades. But in recent years, many companies have gone out of business and found legal loopholes to shed their retirement responsibilities. Those miners affected are today fighting for the passage of the Miners Protection Act, which would provide access and funding to shore up the pension plan. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit. We're expecting to be a tad cooler than yesterday. We topped out here at the mothership around 83 degrees. And we're looking to maybe be only around 75 today, though I expect it to be a tad warmer than that. Plentiful sunshine throughout the day. Winds will be out of the only out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour in just a couple of hours. Mainly clear tonight with lows near 40. And then the winds will be shifted out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10. Partly to mostly cloudy tomorrow with highs in the low 70s. Winds will decrease to light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus continue to increase in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon, where the cases now stand at 9,224 with 121 deceased. Confirmed, that is. Pollen is rated as none outside the window here at the mothership in Rogue River proper. Do I believe it? I don't know. The air quality index, though, for the region is good at 23 parts per million, and that daytime UV index has jumped to high all the way to 6. So wear your SP30 or more. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.01 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 70%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 58 and fair. Paris is 77 and sunny. Rome is 70 and fair. Kyiv is 66 and fair. Kabul is 48 with lots of wind. Hong Kong is 74 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 66 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is a brisk 54 degrees and sunny. And New York is 43 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. Nicole Winfield of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya. A little bit of spice in your life. Italy ordered 2 Russian embassy officials expelled yesterday, Wednesday, and arrested an Italian Navy captain on spying charges after police caught the officer allegedly giving classified documents to one of the Russians in exchange for money. Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio told a joint session of the Italian Parliament's Foreign Relations Committees that the documentation concerned NATO information and that the incident was a hostile act of extreme gravity. It is not just our security at risk, but that of the entire NATO alliance. And we cannot accept this, he told lawmakers. The Foreign Ministry said it summoned Russian Ambassador Sergei Razov to protest the grave incident after a sting operation on the outskirts of Rome caught the Italian and one of the Russians in a clandestine operation to exchange the documents for cash late Tuesday. Italy's Carabinieri paramilitary police said the Italian frigate captain had been arrested. The Russian observed with him, a member of the Russian armed forces stationed at the Russian embassy in Italy, was initially detained but not immediately placed under arrest, given his diplomatic status. He was ordered expelled, along with another Russian embassy official allegedly involved, Di Maio told lawmakers. Di Maio did not provide details about the suspected role of the second Russian. The Russian embassy in Rome confirmed the detention of a diplomat who belonged to the military attaché's office, but would not comment on the incident.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Samuel Petriquin of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The European Union is referring Poland to Europe's top court over long-standing concerns about respect for the rule of law and independence of the country's Supreme Court judges. The bloc's executive commission said it will ask the European Court of Justice to order interim measures until a final judgment is given in the case to prevent the aggravation of serious and irreparable harm inflicted to judicial independence and the EU legal order. The European Commission had previously warned Poland that it might go to the European Court of Justice if the government did not take action to fix the problems with the Polish law on judicial power. It's a crucial step in the infraction procedure, EU Justice Commissioner Didier Reynders said of the court referral. The EU's commission case is part of a long-running dispute between Brussels and the nationalist governments in Poland and Hungary over democratic standards and the rule of law in the 27-nation block. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for this day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon